Hello, my friends. Welcome in. Let's review Game Week 8 and look at Game Week 9 because, well, I woke up today and realized there's a game tomorrow, Friday. So Arsenal, who just played on Monday, somehow are also playing on Friday. That seems a little harsh. And, no, we can't. Gotta get our thinking caps on. This is important. Charitywater.org. Highly recommend. One of my favorite charities of all time. Go check them out. There's also LUKAKU has been injured, which is causing a lot of chaos, not in my team, but maybe in yours. So maybe we'll talk about some of like the big injuries and what you might do in that situation. But let's get right to it, shall we? All right. So as you saw while I was rambling there, 61 points. My goal this year is like, if you get about 60 or 65 points a game week, you could win FPL. So anytime I'm in the 60s, I'm super happy. And what I've kind of realized is there are some pretty severe structural problems with my team, but it's worked out thus far. And my goal is to try and avoid taking any hits. No -4, no -8, if at all possible. So coming into the game week, here's what we knew. We knew Rafinha was most likely going to miss out because he was coming back from Brazil from international duty. And like the game was at, 12:30 in the morning, Friday, UK time equivalent or something like that. So now you got to fly back. The odds that he was going to play 90 minutes was essentially 0. I was kind of hoping he might come in and get a point, at the end of the game, but it didn't happen. I also had Rudiger out with an injury. He left international duty early with a back injury, and then Bamford. I keep reading things how Bamford's almost back, but he's missed now 3 game weeks in a row, including over an international break with a 2-week break. So I kind of rolled it, right? Diego Jota was a unexpected miss, but I kind of went, okay. Like if you go back and you look at my team here, we had Marcel, Semedo, Rudiger, Cody, Ayling, Bamford, Doucouré, Rafinha, Jota played, right? So Ayling is having to have his knee cleaned out or something like that, and so it was just time to go. He'd already dropped to a 4.4 from a 4.5, so you could argue, like, maybe just keep him around on the bench and eventually he'll come back. But, like, I couldn't go into the game week with Rafinha, Ayling, Bamford and not have any subs. And so that's why we went ahead and made the switch. So I dropped Ayling and brought in Azpilicueta. Now, there's lots of popular Chelsea players. Azpilicueta pretty much plays 90 minutes, or at least 60 minutes to give you hopefully a clean sheet. He's not as attacking as Alonso, who now has been dropped, at least for a little bit. Or Chilwell, who was dropped at the beginning for Alonso and now is back. He's not as attacking as Reece James, who's had an injury. But sometimes Azpilicueta plays that right wing-back spot, so he kind of could be a little bit more attacking. How I look at my defenders, for the most part, is I want some combination of really likely to get a clean sheet and maybe some attacking threat. Now, other players of FPL look at it differently. They're like, they want to see all kinds of attacking threat, right? Now, you could argue, like, well, why'd you have Ayling? Well, Ayling was a cheap attacking threat version, so it kind of depends, I guess. But that's why I've got Semedo and Marcel and Cody, because Wolves don't usually concede, like, 3 goals. Like, they might give up 1, but also they play in a wing-back system. Of course, Semedo and Marcel have had essentially 0 returns since I picked them up, and then Cody gets the goal at the death, essentially. I think it was at the end of the game to come back to beat Aston Villa 3-2. So I was glad I had him instead. But this is kind of how we ended up going. And you go like, oh, if we'd had even just 2 points here for Rafinha or another player, Jota comes in, gives you a point, would be very, very nice. But I can't complain. I'm up to 41,971 in the game. I just want to remind everybody, my goal for this year was to be in the top 500,000. So the fact that I was at like 51 grand last week and somehow with having a goose egg on Rafinha, I still went up to almost to just shy of 42,000 or just past 42,000, I guess is the appropriate term because you want a lower number. I'm absolutely thrilled, boys and girls. It's crazy. Currently leading my own community league and the Cooligans, which is they have a show on Fubo TV. I'm sure you know who the Cooligans are. And doing pretty well across all these other leagues as well. I'm 1,292 in America, which doesn't, I don't think, mean anything. But like, wow, 41,000 overall, I'm pretty thrilled with. But my friends, what now? What now? And this is where I think that long-term planning kicks in. So when we talk about long-term planning here, it's like, here are my options. I'm actually okay this week. Okay, you'll notice Mbumo. I've heard Mbumo. I think it's Mbumo. I had to bring him in. And this is where I think the biggest difference for me this year is paying attention to the news has paid off a little bit. Watching more content from other content creators. Like I've been watching a lot of Andy at Let's Play FPL, right? I've watched some FPL Mate. So like great channels, you're getting different perspectives. And it's not the idea that like you just template and like, you know, you're just going to copy whatever they do, because I haven't. But it gives you a different perspective. And it makes you think about certain things in a different way. So if we come up and we find Everton. So Doucouré has 45 points this year. Okay, he's picked up an ankle or a foot injury. It's like a fracture, but not like a full fracture. Fabrizio Romano, the here we go transfer guy, tweeted about this and said he's going to be out 6 weeks. And Doucouré himself like responded to the tweet with like a light blue heart and like a strong thing. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty much as confirmed as you can get that he's going to miss 6 weeks. Now, granted, you know, he misses. I was probably going to be dropping him anyway because he had Man City and Liverpool coming up. But he's also not at a price where, like, okay, if you set him on the bench, you're not too worried about it. So I would have loved to have him against Watford, even Wolves, and obviously Brentford. But really, the Watford game I was kind of excited about. And the reason I picked up Doucouré is Everton have had all kinds of injuries. They've got Sigurdsson that is essentially never going to play football again because of his legal problems. Let's just leave it there. Delph has been out. Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison were out. So it's like they have no attacking threat, right? Who does that really leave, right? Rondon, yeah, the guy from West Brom. Okay. Townsend has been very good. Gray has had a higher than expected number of goals versus the shots in the box he's had, right? We've talked about that a little bit. But it's like there's only so many options, and Doucouré is a great, in my opinion, box-to-box midfielder and has been getting into spots where he's got 6 returns in 8 games. That's not bad. And he got an assist against Man United. He got a goal against Norwich, as you might expect. Two assists against Burnley. Like, he's having a phenomenal season. I feel kind of gutted for him that he's been injured. But his price had gone up to 5.7. I picked him up at 5.5, which meant for my team's value, he was at 5.6. So essentially banked an extra 0.1. And my expectation, my friends, is that his price is going to drop. As you might imagine, as word gets around that this isn't a foot injury, he'll be back in a week, the number of transfers out is going to go up significantly, and I do think that price is going to drop back to at least 5.6. So that's fine. Like, I sold him for 5.6. If I had to rebuy him in the future at 5.6, that's fine. Even better would be if he dropped to 5.5, because everybody that's got him kind of sitting on the bench is going, oh, by the way, he's out for 6 weeks. I need to deploy that cash someplace else. Of course, that depends on what other injuries you have in your team. And so I went with Mbumo, who has only 2 returns this season. But this is something that he has been popular with some of the other FPL channels that I've been watching content of. But here's why. And I'm going to show you something here. So all I did was really Google Brian Mbumo XG. And this led me to understat.com. There's all kinds of different stat websites that you could use. Some of them are free. Some of them are paid. This is free. There's a giant ad at the top, so I've scrolled down a little bit. But you can see he's played all 8 games. He has 695 minutes. He's essentially playing as a striker. If you look at the position, he's playing as a forward. Okay? So you're getting essentially a forward for a midfielder slot and a really significantly low price. Now you go, oh, he's only had 2 goals. Well, his expected goals is 3.63 with an expected assist of 0.44. So essentially, he should have 4 returns right now, and he only has 2. So you might go, well, that's not the type of player you want to pick up. But the idea is you have to kind of go with, he's putting himself in really good positions. Ivan Toney has played more of, from what I've seen, He's like that strong striker that the ball gets punted up to, he can hold onto the ball, and Mbumo gets going, and he's hit. I think I saw something where Mbumo has hit the woodwork 6 times this year, which is 5 more than any other player. Yeah, meaning most players have only hit the post or the bar once. Mbumo's hit it 6 times. So he could have significantly higher returns. So you look at, okay, expected goals per 90, expected assists per 90. Essentially, his expected goal involvement for Brentford is 0.53. So essentially, you're looking at potentially a return every other game, and currently he's undervalued. So it's just like buying players on FPL sometimes is a little bit like buying investments, where you go like, this has gone down a lot, but it's probably like, that's the time you want to buy it. You want to buy it when it's not performing, and then all of a sudden it starts performing. That's how I've kind of looked at it. So he's been, again, because you can't beat the price. He's now up to 5.6. So I picked him up at 5.5. So I think what has happened is people have gone like, uh-oh, Doucouré, and they need to make a like-for-like change. Like, they can't go from Doucouré to, say, like a De Bruyne, because the price is almost double, right? Or it might actually be, yeah, it's almost double. So it's like, unless you're making a lot of moves, that was an easy choice. But I knew I had to do it fast because I felt like Doucouré's value is going to drop, and apparently Mbumo's price has gone up. If it goes up to 5.7, I will have repeated what I've done with Doucouré. And you might not think the extra 0.1 every couple weeks that you can bank on transfers would be important, but obviously if you're building up your bank balance, it allows you to get slightly better players. So I had to do that. So I've already used my free transfer this week. I don't have any more free transfers. I'm kind of good. If I go into this game week with this squad, barring any horrible news, this is how I would line up. Now, Bamford is still flagged red. There's an article in The Guardian that says they're expecting Bamford and I think, who's the other guy? Calvin Phillips should be back for the game on Saturday. Now, should be back for the game on Saturday doesn't mean going to be back, right? Or it doesn't mean going to start. Like, maybe he comes in for 20 minutes at the end of the game. They're testing that ankle. There's really not been a whole lot of news about how bad this ankle injury is, except for the fact that Bamford said, prior to the international break, that he thought he'd be back after the international break, and all of a sudden he's not. And it's like, oh. So I kind of took a gamble and missed out on, Watford and Southampton, and then now we got Wolves. And if he comes back for Norwich, then I think it's still been worth it, because I think, Leeds need to score a bunch of goals, and I think he and Rafinha could light Norwich up, take all their frustrations out on them, as you would. But even if that's the case, if Bamford is out, here's how I kind of look at my team. Okay, Jota came on and played 30-ish minutes in the Champions League. So you could look at that a couple different ways. Is that because he's being rested to play against Manchester United? Or were they taking off, Mane and Firmino throughout the game to make sure they had the legs to play against Manchester United? I don't know if Diego Jota starts, but even if he doesn't, I'm okay with him coming in as a sub for Bamford. So it's like, I think I would probably, because of the game week starting on Friday, you kind of have to make your decisions. And this is just my squad, so your squad might obviously be different, but you kind of have to make your decisions now, or at least before the deadline at 1:30 UK time on Friday, as to what's going to happen. So you're hoping for some early news, but you may not get it. So let's say Bamford doesn't play, well then Diego Jota would auto sub in. Now let's say he doesn't, but he doesn't come on because the game doesn't go that way. He doesn't start. Well, then I've got Cody lined up against Leeds, who without Bamford only have Rafinha. Now probably concede a goal, but again, I'm probably going to get a point or two from one of these substitutions. So I'm not, that's not ideal, but I'm not that worried about it. Also, Rudiger is no longer flagged, so we're hoping that back injury is taken care of, because I think Rudiger and Azpilicueta, you'd expect them to get a clean sheet, right, against Norwich, but who knows? I'll say that. They'll concede 4. It'll be amazing. And I think Semedo, of my, Wolves defender options, which in hindsight was not a good move, that's what I'm talking about with structural problems, is it kind of limits. I can't go to, Jimenez from Antonio, or the other striker, Huang is the other striker for, because I've got 3 Wolves players. In hindsight, that was a bad idea. I was just thinking the 3-5-2 or 5-3-2 with the wingbacks with a team that doesn't concede that many goals was probably a good idea. It hasn't really worked out. But, you know, you got Leeds. Again, if Bamford doesn't play, I mean, maybe Rafinha gets something going, but Leeds has just not looked very good. That has been the surprise of the season for me. Semedo, again, against a injury, not prone, like heavily injured Leeds squad, maybe he gets an attacking return. I'm sure Marçal will get the attacking return because that's just kind of how these things go. But you're just playing the odds, right? Antonio and Benrahma against Tottenham. Tottenham have conceded, like, let's go back here. Okay, if we go to expected goals against, this kind of indicator of how poor defensively they've been. They're, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th in the league, or 8th worst, I guess, in the league, with 12 against, and they should have had 12.86 against. So they're right about where you would expect them to be, and it's not very good. So, like, again, they're in the same ballpark as Southampton and Leicester, which is also a surprise. And I got quite the Spurs fan in our community Discord, which you should check out in the link below to come hang out with us. And like, Eric Dyer is not a Premier League center back, but is being played there. So Antonio and Benrahma have cooled off. Like, I've had Antonio the entire time. Benrahma I brought in, and he's not done anything since I brought him in except get a couple clean sheets. But that's not a terrible lineup. But I want to show you what I'm looking at. I talked about future transfers, and this is where this is important, and we'll talk about Lukaku. All right, so this is how I handle planning my future game weeks, because what you don't want to do is come into a game week and be surprised that you've got like 3 really bad matchups for half your squad, as an example. Okay, so I tend to, if a player is injured, they currently flagged red, obviously I'm going to flag that so it gets my attention. Or if they have a really bad matchup, like Sanchez taking on Man City and Liverpool in the next 2. But again, what this allows me to do is go like, okay, I've already used my free transfer this week, so I'm going to have 1 this week, and then if I use it, then I'll have 1 here. It gives me options, okay? And I've got Benrahma and Antonio. Starting game week 11, their fixture run over the next 5 is not great, because they have Liverpool, Wolves, Man City, Brighton, Chelsea. Brighton is also pretty good defensively. Wolves, like I've talked about, has been all right defensively. I'm not as worried about that game as obviously Liverpool, Man City, and Chelsea. So then you start going, okay, do I want to start dropping one of those players? Do I sell Antonio and upgrade to somebody else? And these are all the players I'm like essentially currently tracking right now as potential options. Like, you'll notice I don't have Ronaldo, Lukaku, Harry Kane, because my playing style is not to put 12 plus million in more than one player, which is Mo Salah, who's like clearly the best player in the game right now. I'll say that he'll get injured. But this is kind of in the light green is what I'm anticipating I would select, if that makes sense. So this allows me to kind of go like, okay, again, if Bamford is back next week, then he has to play, and I would feel good about Antonio against Aston Villa, Vardy against Arsenal, Benrahma. So Jota, because the minutes concern, I would probably, and because Brighton are pretty good defensively, wouldn't get used. And I start looking, again, I haven't done this for all the game weeks, but I start looking at, okay, if I'm not going to start using a player a lot, then I probably need to sell that player, because other FPL players are doing the same thing. And so, again, I track my potential options down here as we're moving forward. And you'll notice there's a lot of red on this side of the screen. Now, you can do this with a bunch of different websites, but they're covered in ads, and I kind of find it distracting. So I just like to type it out and do it myself. I have a problem in game week 15, right? Because of West Ham playing Chelsea and Wolves playing Liverpool. Now, this is not as much of a problem. Again, game week 15 is so far in the future. There'll probably be injuries. You got to make changes anyway. But like, if I sold Marçal and brought in somebody else, it doesn't really matter who it is, somebody that's not playing Liverpool or Man City, and again, same problem in game week 16, then I can go 1, 2, and then that third player playing somebody else. That makes sense? So I can play 3 at the back. Now, of course, your bench options then become players that are playing against Liverpool, and that's not great. So you kind of have to be aware of these things moving forward so that you're not making, oh no, decisions. And you know, let's say you had this game. Let's come back over here to this side. Let's say you come back to this game week and you're like, oh no, panic, and you sell all these players, but then you miss that, you know, Antonio and Benrahma then have Burnley, Arsenal, and let's say 3 other really good fixtures, but you sell them off because you hadn't planned for it. So it helps in advance to plan for these things well in advance. And when I look at the squad, I'm actually pretty happy with where we're at. I told you when I did my wild card and I brought in Ramsdale, because a lot of players have a 4.5 keeper Sanchez or Ramsdale, and then a 4.0 like Ben Foster. But I like how Ramsdale and Sanchez's fixtures kind of went opposite of each other. You could obviously make a case here to play Sanchez for Newcastle versus Ramsdale at Watford, but I think Watford are just not good right now. And then when Ramsdale has Liverpool, then Sanchez has got Aston Villa, and then Ramsdale gets Newcastle, and then so like it's not perfect, but it's good enough that you can kind of move it around to the teams that are not in form or not very good, essentially. And then again, if I'm planning to bring in Ivan Toney, I want to know what his fixtures are going to look like, because I might have to hold on to him for a while. Does that make sense? I think it does, but this is how I plan my transfers. And then at the bottom, I put down like how much I have in the bank right now, what I might do. Like I'm thinking about selling Marçal because of that situation over here with the Liverpool and Man City games back to back, and bringing in a Livramento. Southampton have been okay defensively, but it's really that he's a 4.3. I could even bring in Shimikas if I wanted to. I don't really want to, but I could. I just don't think he's going to get enough minutes to justify the 4.0. Even though he's a 4.0, you still want to be able to get like a point from your sub bench. Let's talk about that Lukaku guy. So I feel like I have kind of lucked out here in that a lot of the big FPL accounts immediately, as soon as Ronaldo came in, went and got Ronaldo. Some of them got Ronaldo and Lukaku and like really devastated the rest of their teams, like playing a bunch of 4.5 defenders and picking up a 4.5 midfielder like Basuma to be able to fit 3 premium players into their squads. The risk reward is great unless it doesn't work out. And I kind of feel like it's not worked out for Lukaku in particular. Like if you picked him up in week 2, you were feeling pretty good, right? Because in 3 weeks, you got, what is that? 23 points. You're feeling pretty good, but he is blanked 4 weeks in a row. And this is also a good reminder, if you're this far into the video, to hit the like button and subscribe if you're new. This is kind of a rambly thing. I didn't plan this out because I didn't realize there was a game week. But it's also a good reminder to try and not make changes before the Champions League and Europa League games, because Lukaku went out like between around the 23rd minute, 27th minute, something like that, against Malmo, and you kind of go like, why is Thomas Tuchel playing Lukaku in the Champions League against Malmo? Now, granted, I think Chelsea at the time had 3 points, but it's Malmo. I mean, come on, bro. Come on. But Lukaku ends up getting injured. He rolled his ankle. He signaled that he needed to come off. So you would think he's not going to play this week. Now, that's devastating, especially if you moved early. Maybe you had some other injury, like you finally gave up on Bamford after Saturday, and you're like, I'm just going to make some changes, and I'm going to bring in Lukaku because he's playing Norwich. Well, now he's probably, not confirmed, probably not playing Norwich. If he just misses the one game, you're like, that's gutting, but you're like, okay. You still have Newcastle and Burnley, but the problem is you don't know how long this injury is going to last. And so, again, it comes back to your play style. Like, if you come over here to the forwards, I feel like I've kind of lucked out where the top 2 highest scoring forwards are the players I have in my team. The highest scoring midfielder is the one I've had the entire time. Now, Benrahma, a lot of those points came not under my ownership, but like Doucouré that I picked up is the 5th highest score of a midfielder. Again, part of this is just luck, and part of it is kind of playing the odds and paying attention. Same thing. I got 6 points from Azpilicueta, but like I didn't get all the other points. So my defenders have not been on this list. So maybe it kind of balances out in the end. But that's just it's a healthy reminder with this game being on Friday in the midweek games. You kind of have to, if you can, wait, or you're taking a risk that the player you just transferred in is gonna get injured, and now what are you gonna do? So I'm also kind of glad I haven't picked up. Some people picked up like Saka or Ben White or Tierney. I think I had Tierney at the beginning of the season for Arsenal, but I mean, how are they playing on a Monday and a Friday? I mean, I know there's teams that have played in the middle of the week. No, I didn't have Tierney at any point, but it just goes like that seems a little unfair. Like if you play on a Monday, shouldn't you at least play on a Saturday? But that's how my team's looking right now, folks. What would you do? Would you sit with Bamford another week? The other thing, Vardy is now up to, he went down to a 10.4 in price at one point, and now he's up to a 10.6. My cost value for him is 10.5, so that doesn't really impact me. But I imagine there's going to be a ton of people. Like if you got Lukaku right now, your options essentially are to, if you've got the money, to go to Harry Kane a little early, based on the fixtures. Vardy, obviously, because I think Vardy's fixtures are looking pretty good, and he's been in form, right? Like, this is a nice little run. And he's got 8 returns in 8 games, which is just absolutely not. I'll say that. He's going to get injured and blank this week, but that's kind of how it goes, isn't it? You could go to Ronaldo, but Ronaldo's not played for, this is Fernandez, but like, you got Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea in the next 5. Are you really going to move to Ronaldo? Now, Ronaldo here would be good, but by that time, Lukaku's probably back, right? Lukaku could be back here. So you kind of have to make some decisions now. And that was the last thing I'm going to leave you with, and I want your thoughts here. Would you... I don't know. I'm never going to have Lukaku in my team. So that being said, I kind of feel like there's rotation city in the midfield for Chelsea. Like, I still think Kovacic is a good pickup, but he's definitely more of a DM, and so I'm kind of glad at this point that I hadn't picked him up because his expected goal involvement is pretty low. Now, he has 4 returns in 8 games, but he's also essentially blanked in the last 3 games. So, do you go to a Havertz or a Mount? Mount has only come in and played, 25 minutes, and he had a game here with 45 minutes. I'm just not convinced there's a ton of value in the midfield of players that are going to play 90 minutes, which that's what I'm trying to pick up, is players that are going to go the distance. They're going to start all their games. So if you were looking for a third Chelsea player, could you get Chalobah on the cheap as a bench option? Like, he's not going to play every game, and I guess that's the problem. But he didn't play. He didn't play against Malmo, at least not in the first 60 minutes, I think. I guess he's not going to get a clean sheet, but I kind of go, if you had to have a player that you felt pretty good that there wouldn't be goals conceded when they came on as a sub, 4.8, if he was a little cheaper, I'm kind of tempted to have, like, I would not be surprised if Chalobah starts this weekend against Norwich to rest, I don't know, Christensen. Hopefully not Azpilicueta or Rudiger. But that's a tasty little run. I'm not going to do it because I don't have the transfers for it, but I'm just kind of curious what you would think about that. But if you enjoyed this, my friends, hit that like button. I know this has kind of been a rambly thing. I do want to show you live FPL. This just goes to show you how insanely close it is. I love live FPL. Livefpl.net. You put in your FPL number, which is in the URL. If you go to your FPL points screen here, up top, if you look in the URL, it has a 7-digit number. That's your FPL number. You grab that and you prop it into live FPL, and it shows you all kinds of cool things. Like, you're able to see like your live rank, which is kind of cool. But this is also important. So this just goes to show how incredibly close it is. So if you're sitting here right now and you're like, oh, I'm in the top 200K, you're only 22 points off of 41,971. Like, I'm only, if I lose 2 points, I'd be at 50K. So it's like, it is still incredibly tight. Now, if you're at 4 million or 145 points off, you got a long way to go. But there's still a long season, right? I just think this is an interesting distribution to show, like, even the top 10K is 16 points. Like, if I had captained Salah the other week where he got 13 points, I would essentially be knocking on the door of 10K, which is absolutely insane when you think about it. So everything I'm watching and reading says don't worry too much about your rank. I'm going to enjoy that I'm in the top 42,000 right now. But again, one bad game week and you could drop out of the top 100,000. I mean, honestly, that is a thing that could happen. So I just think that's kind of interesting. My goal this year is to be here. So I'm 42 points ahead of that. Seems pretty good, my friends. Paying attention pays off. We'll see you next time. Good luck in game week 9.